As twilight fell upon the slopes of Mount Tabor, it wasn't just another ordinary night in the heart of Israel. The air held a silence so thick, even the animals in the field seemed to understand that something unusual was coming. In that region, where the winds sang ancient songs among the olive trees and the stars lit up reverently over the ancestral land, a heavenly secret moved with divine precision. It was the year 688 BC. The people of Dor, a city built on the stone foundations of the Great Mount, lived their days in relative peace, but always under the shadow of the threat lurking on the other side of the hills, the Chaldeans, a nation known for its cruelty and relentless desire to conquer territories and impose its gods sculpted in bronze and gold. Led by Zobar, a calculating man who proclaimed himself son of the storm, they advanced throughout the region with vast armies and a thirst for conquest. And now their eyes were set on Dor. Inside the city, the elders gathered in a lamp-lit hall, discussing strategies that seemed pointless against such a great danger. The ancient stone wall, which had stood for centuries, was no match for the iron battering rams and flaming catapults that were approaching. But in the midst of the anxiety, there was a different man. Eliab, son of a weaver and known for his songs about the Most High God, was not a soldier nor a royal advisor. He worked with plants and tinctures, extracting fragrances from flowers and leaves as offerings for the local temple. Yet his calm voice carried weight. "We are not the ones who should fight this battle. If the Lord wills it, he will send his defender, and if he does not, may his will be done regardless." Some mocked his faith. Others remained silent out of respect. But that very same night, as the watchmen of Dor changed shifts on the outer wall, something subtle happened. A sudden breeze, too cold for the season, blew through the wooden gates. And one of the watchmen, a young man named Yadon, swore he saw a beam of light slide like mist through the mountains. He thought it was just the moon's reflection, until he felt a chill run up his spine, making him abandon his post for a moment, returning with his heart pounding. The next morning, the first trumpets of the Chaldeans echoed through the valleys. Their black flags waved in the dust of the march, and thousands of soldiers occupied the plains with frightening precision. Inside the walls, the sound of the war drums made the children cry and the elders cover their heads in prayer. "You know our limits. If you come, Lord, come with your power." The Chaldeans, full of confidence, set up their camps around Dor. In the main tent, Zobar drank date wine as he looked at the maps and smiled. "Tomorrow at sunrise, we will break their walls like dry twigs." Little did he know that on that night, the hills would witness something no military tactic could foresee. Night fell over Dor like a heavy blanket. There was no wind. There was no sound. Only the occasional clinking of Chaldean weapons and the held breaths of the Israelite guards. But in the heavens, something began to move, invisible to human eyes, but not to the spirit. A messenger of the Most High, forged in pure light and clothed in righteousness, had been released. This was not like the angels in paintings, nor like the cherubim with gentle wings and soft expressions. The one descending now was a guardian of war, a presence that existed before time and carried the weight of divine judgment. At that hour, Eliab was not sleeping. Sitting near the wall, he held a piece of purple cloth. He prayed in a low voice, almost as if talking to an unseen friend. "Eliab, he has arrived." Outside, in the Chaldean camps, the soldiers celebrated around bonfires, confident of victory in the morning. Zobar, lying on his bed of furs, dreamt of his triumphant entry into Dor, with the spoils of the city and the submission of its people. But before midnight struck, one of his generals suddenly sat up, gasping for air. "General, something is wrong." The feeling was of suffocation, as if the air itself had become too thick to breathe. A few minutes later, a dry, muffled bang with no clear origin echoed through the valleys. A faint, almost invisible light crossed the sky like contained lightning. The dogs began to bark desperately. The horses reared up as if they felt what the humans could not see. And then silence fell again. But this time, it was the silence of a judgment that had just been pronounced. From their high posts, the watchmen of Dor began to notice something strange. Parts of the enemy camp were going dark. Campfires dying out, sounds stopping, one by one. As if an invisible force was walking among the tents, snuffing out lives like a candle flame. There were no screams, only absence. The bodies fell silently. The warriors who planned to attack at dawn would not see the sunrise. Inside the city, the Chaldean drums fell silent. The people of Dor, once terrified, began to murmur prayers, hugging each other in gratitude and wonder. Eliabe slowly rose and went to the temple. At the altar, a different perfume hung in the air, not of lilies nor of herbs, but something he had never smelled before, like the fragrance of eternity. That morning, 176,400 Chaldean soldiers did not wake up. The few remaining witnesses, confused and terrified, retreated in the dark. Zobar disappeared. Some say he fled to distant lands. Others that he went mad after seeing what he saw. A flash among the tents and a glowing figure hovering over the valley. But in the city of Dor, the truth echoed like a sacred hymn. The God of Israel had defended his people with a mighty hand, without a single sword raised by human hands. There upon those ancient stones, another living page of faith was written. The next morning, when the first rays of sun touched the top of Mount Tabor, they revealed a scene that no warrior, no scribe, no king would dare forget. From the top of Dor's walls, men and women looked out at a battlefield where there was no battle, no spear stuck in the stones, no war cry echoing through the hills. Just a sacred silence covering the lifeless bodies of thousands of soldiers who, until the night before, proclaimed themselves invincible. The elders of Dor, used to laws and customs, didn't know how to record what had happened. What kind of story could contain such a grand and mysterious event? Eliabe, let's not call this a victory. Let's call it a testimony. A testimony that heaven still bends to earth when there is true faith. A testimony that the invisible hand that created the universe still moves for those who trust. Families gathered in the squares, lighting lamps of gratitude. Children played around the wells, as if they had forgotten the shadow of war. And in the temple, a new inscription was carved into stones taken from the mountain itself. Here, the Eternal showed that even without an army, he is Lord over those who march, over those who threaten, over those who forget who the true king is. Months passed. The news of the miracle at Dor spread through the villages, deserts, and faraway ports. Merchants talked about it in hushed whispers. In synagogues and travelers' circles, the story of the angel of the mountain became a symbol of comfort and warning. No one defies God's justice without consequence, and no one who cries out in sincere faith is left unanswered. Eliabe continued his simple life, gathering plants, teaching the young ones about the fragrances of creation and the secrets of prayers, said with a pure heart, "Eliabe, I just asked," and he listened. Decades later, travelers still asked about the remains of the Chaldean army. Some searched for relics, others doubted, but the residents of ancient Dor smiled patiently and said, "Nothing is left because everything that was erased that night was erased by hands that leave no trace." And so the story continued, passing through generations like a sacred breeze that insists on reminding us there are days when heaven descends to earth not to watch but to intervene, and when that happens, nothing remains the same. If you've made it this far, it's because this story has touched you deeply. So I have a special invitation for you. Become a part of our family here on this channel. Subscribe, gently tap the bell icon, and if you can, share this video with someone who needs reminding that God still moves mountains for those who trust. Leave a comment below and tell us what this story made you think about. Have you ever experienced something that seemed impossible, but in the end, it had a touch of God's hand? Tell us about it. Let's create a space of faith, a place for sharing and memories that the world needs. See you in the next video, and never forget, what you can't see can be more real than anything you can.